My name is Bill. If you truly appreciate real-life demonic journeys into the void, do not even think of missing tonight's episode. True Ouija board experiences that will certainly give you nightmares. Recently, my viewers on Twitch aided me in tracking down the most terrifying and true Ouija board tales we could find on the internet. They turned out to be most bizarre, and we're starting in on them right now. Here at ParanormalAuthority.com is a story by Brandon Hall entitled Ouija Board Danger Warnings, a Paranormal Advisory. Few items, if any, begins the author, have as terrifying a reputation as the Ouija board. Though you can easily pick one up at a local toy store, paranormal enthusiasts of all walks of life will tell you not to do that. Ouija boards are stigmatized as dangerous and unpredictable for a reason. The horror stories associated with them are reason enough for anyone to think twice before they try to use one. That said, the choice to use a Ouija board is yours to make. Don't do it. Some people have good experiences with them. I've never heard of any, while others regret ever touching one. If you do decide to use one, you might want to play safe by heeding these warnings while you reach out for contact. Thank you, Zacchaeus Hundley, for the super chat. Zacchaeus says it's lit. Thank you, Zach. Number 1, choose the right setting. Much like with any other paranormal ritual, your setting matters. It's important to remember that the portal you open can influence your daily life. There are certain places that are unsafe to practice in, as well as places that are just downright foolish. Avoid practicing inside your home. Most people will use their Ouija board inside the home, and at times it can be okay. However, there have been multiple occasions where the board invited something evil into the household, and it just didn't want to leave. A negative entity in your home can affect your daily life in terrible ways, even going so far as to cause sickness and loss. That's why it's best to avoid using it where you live. Yes, graveyards might contain plenty of entities that are willing to talk, but do you really want to deal with that high level of activity? Probably not. Graveyards are filled with energy dealing with grief, loss, and at times hatred. It's also a resting place of many souls that just don't want to be disturbed. Please leave the graveyards alone. And woe is the fool who tries to use a Ouija board in an abandoned hospital or a place of murder. The sheer amount of negative energy involved in these places will often overpower the Ouija users and spiral out of control when given a way to communicate. The most important thing to remember when you're using a Ouija board is that you can never really trust what the entity you find says. Ouija boards act as a way to open up a door between this world and the next. What lies beyond is not always a loved one, nor is it always a positive entity. Here's what you need to know about this particular warning. They might not be who they say they are. You cannot see who or what you're speaking to by way of the Ouija board, and even if you could, looks can be deceiving. Entities, just like people, have the ability to lie about who they are and what their intentions may be. Particularly evil entities will often use the desires of grieving families to hear from those who died as a way to manipulate them. There have been countless cases of people who thought they reached out to loved ones who passed, only to find out they had something far more sinister show up instead. In mild cases, this led to hauntings and nightmares, but in the worst, trusting the Ouija spirits led to possession and paranormal activity powerful enough to force people out of their homes. Ouija board entities can be demonic. This is common knowledge, but it still deserves to be mentioned. Ouija boards don't just contact the dead, they can contact other entities as well. Some of these entities are not human, nor were they ever human to begin with. The possibility of summoning a demon using the Ouija is very real and should be something to watch out for. It's worth pointing out that this is the primary reason why people suggest using a Ouija board in a salt circle. Unbroken, please. And performing a cleanse with white sage after using the board. Keeping sage burning during your Ouija time can prevent demonic activity from even starting, but it's not foolproof. You have those certain demons that love the sage. Beware of asking the wrong things. A lot of the worst outcomes involving the Ouija session start because people say or do something stupid during a session. You can prevent this by watching your mouth and avoiding certain questions, remarks, and attitudes such as, don't ask them to prove they're there. You might not like the proof. Generally speaking, it's an iffy concept to ask a spirit to prove they're there in the first place. If you do choose to ask this of the spirit, do so respectfully. Don't jeer at it or imply that it is weak if it does not manifest. Don't be disrespectful. Imagine if someone called you over to their home, begged you to visit, and then treated you like dirt. You would get upset or even angry, would you not? Of course you would. The same can be said for sentient spirits. If you're rude, or start mocking them, or even worse, if you berate them, you won't have a good time. And never try to summon a demon. For reasons many of us cannot understand, a lot of Ouija newbies seem to want to interact with demons. Inviting a demon into your household is a terrible, terrible idea. It will not end well. Don't even think about it. Ouija spirits might be able to know the future, or they might not. Those that can often only seem interested in telling you predictions that are less than great, such as the day that you die, or a future tragedy you will experience. It's uncertain whether these Ouija warnings actually cause bad events to occur, or whether they were just bound to happen. Either way, it's better to stay safe than be sorry. Asking for future predictions is rarely a good idea. And do not forget to close out your Ouija sessions properly. Every Ouija session needs to be opened by asking the spirits to interact with you, but it also needs to be closed. Closing a session is done by asking the spirits to leave, thanking them for being present, and then using white sage or another clearing ritual of your choice to cleanse any remaining area of negative energy. And always close after you're done, regardless of whether or not you were able to see something paranormal. You always need to close your session. Just abruptly ending the session without telling the spirits to leave and cleaning your area is similar to leaving your front door open for days. It invites more and more entities just to waltz into your life, regardless of their intentions. Let's check out some art.
Dozens of Colombian girls are hospitalized with anxiety after playing with a Ouija board. This happened in the country of Colombia, specifically in South America. Many people are playing with it in Mexico and Colombia, and many girls are being sent to the hospital. I know two people that had played with the Ouija board when they were younger. One was 16, one was a little older, and they felt the atmosphere shift. A cold atmosphere in the room. One of the girls, lights turned off, but both of them had the same experience where that little triangle that spells out the words as you're communicating with the quote-unquote dead, it spelled out Satan and then 666. And they were not even moving the little thing that's on the board. So this is real. It's nothing to play with. It's not a joke. 28 schoolgirls were hospitalized with anxiety attacks after allegedly playing with Ouija boards at their school in Colombia, reports say. The girls reportedly suffered signs of fainting, anxiety, and other symptoms at the Galeras Educational Institution in Galeras, according to Jam Press and shared by the New York Post. The girls were admitted to a hospital accompanied by parents and school faculty. Info on their diagnoses have not been released. Ouija boards were created in the U.S. in 1886, and they are often referred to as spirit or talking boards. They are believed to be a way for the living to communicate with the dead. People think they're communicating with ghosts. These are familiar spirits. This is not something you want to communicate with and allow access into your room, because once you play this game, you're actually in agreement and saying it's okay for them to enter your life because you want to have a relationship with them. So you're giving them authority to jump on you and then go home with you, which is actually what happened to my friend. She played the Ouija board game when she was 16, and then when she came home, it was very different. She felt like something was always following her, and I told her years later that she took home a demon with the Ouija board. I work here in a hospital kiosk, and every day I see 3 or 4 children arrive after fainting. Every day, 3 to 4 kids coming in her hospital, explained one mother. She added, "Our children always have a good breakfast, and it cannot be said that's what's happening is due to lack of food. It's not because they're hungry, they're fainting." So this is one of the girls that's rushed to a medical facility after experiencing anxiety and fainting. The school is apparently waiting for the medical diagnoses before providing further information. November 2022, 11 teenagers were found collapsed after using a Ouija board at another school in Colombia. The Daily Mail reports this is something you need to be aware of and not be ignorant about. I share a new article every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
None of these fake creepypastas. All true stories tonight. Here at ThoughtCatalog.com is a story entitled Zozo the Ouija Board Demon Who Will Ruin Your Life. It's written by Chrissy Stockton. And Ms. Stockton begins. Zozo is a Ouija board demon. He can possess people who use the board by slowly gaining their trust. They are not always aware they're being possessed, as Zozo may lie and pretend to be a sympathetic spirit instead of a malevolent Ouija board demon. Most people do not know they are talking to Zozo until it is too late. Who is Zozo? Zozo, noun, a malevolent Ouija board demon who terrorizes and or possesses those with whom it comes into contact. Stories about Zozo increased in popularity in 2009, following a viral post on a paranormal message board. Darren Wayne Evans brought Zozo the Ouija board demon to popular knowledge when he posted a long and horrifying story of his encounter with Zozo on the True Ghost Tales message board, warning others that Ouija boards are not a toy. Evans said, quote, "During my experiences with Ouija boards, one particular spirit always seemed compelled to make its presence known. Its name is Zozo. Today I refuse even to pronounce its name, as I believe its mere pronunciation can cause it to manifest. Too many times to count. It has at first pretended to be a nice spirit, or pretend to be whomever I was trying to contact. Eventually it showed its true self, cussing me, threatening me, and other persons in the room. Once it actually cussed me using what looked like Latin or Hebrew, and using biblical terminology. I was genuinely fascinated and startled by how many times Zozo actually showed up, even in many different states and on many different boards. It always wound up being very nasty and commented freely about how it wanted to possess my girlfriends and take them to paradise. When asked where paradise was, it spelled out hell. One time after Zozo was being extremely evil, I walked into my bathroom, only to see my 1-year-old daughter about to drown. Her mother had left her alone in the tub just for a second, and somehow the water got turned on and was overflowing. Instinctively, she had her face tilted up, and was seconds from going under when I grabbed her from the water. The next day, she was hospitalized for some weird internal infection. I was put in isolation for 14 days straight, as doctors struggled to diagnose the illness. We almost lost her, and that was when I began to suspect demonic attack. End quote. Evans said that since this experience, he's made contact with other people who have spoken to someone called Zozo by way of the spirit board. Skeptics believe Evans invented the entire existence of Zozo, but there are earlier mentions of Zozo on the internet. A Nigerian forum talks about him 4 years earlier, and Zozo may be another name of Pazuzu, an almost 3,000-year-old demon who has the body of a man and the tail of a scorpion. That was also the demon I believe in The Exorcist, Pazuzu. In 1818, a book called The Dictionnaire Infernal was published. The book was on the topic of demonology and included a list of demons. The book contains an account of a young girl who was terrorized by demons 2 years earlier, and one of those demons is named Zozo. It is believed that Roland Doe was a victim of Zozo. Roland Doe is a pseudonym for a 14-year-old boy who underwent an exceptionally violent exorcism in 1951 and became the inspiration for the famous novel and film The Exorcist. Roland's aunt was a regular user of the Ouija and had him use it with her. By all reports after the exorcism, Roland grew up and did not experience issues with demonic possession again. In 1977, Zozo was also believed to be behind the famous Enfield poltergeist haunting as the catalyst, where the two young sisters were playing with a Ouija board at a friend's home. During that initial encounter, they say they knew something bad had happened, and they saw the face of a demon manifest. How to know if you are talking to Zozo? How to know if you're not? Don't use the Ouija board. Excuse me. Most people don't know they're talking to Zozo until it's too late. Zozo can lie and mimic other spirits. He can pretend to be whoever the person using the Ouija board will be most sympathetic to. He can pretend to be the spirit of a scared little girl or a beloved relative who has passed. Even if you ask directly for a name, Zozo is not obligated to reveal himself. Many people believe that the Ouija board should not be regarded as a toy or a game. They believe it is a door to the spirit world. And it does not matter whether you believe in it or not. Once the door is open, any spirit, good or evil, can walk through it and contact you, or worse. And if there are the same ratio of evil spirits to good spirits as there are evil people to good people, I'd be careful too. If you do decide to use one, follow the rules of the Ouija board. I think we discussed that during the last reading. Because now it's time for the next bit of art.
Dara.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Please don't do that.
I think I might
Dara,
actually.
please don't. Dara, you can't do that.
I think I'm gonna do it. Today, I'm gonna be climbing this mountain and finding an abandoned mine. I brought a Ouija board. Land's poisoned. Just to give this a bit more perspective, I am now miles away from civilization, on top of a mountain, alone, and darkness is descending in about 3 hours. I found it. I didn't think I'd actually be happy to find it, but this is my home for the night. I don't have home written on the board, but I do have leave written on it. That'll suffice. Hello? Okay. I'm already kind of nervous. Wait till darkness completely descends and it's nighttime and I can't leave the mine. So we're going to go in and to set up a Ouija board. Yes, that does say danger. That goes a long way down. We're going further into the mine. There's so much to this place. This place is huge. I am quite afraid of this, of what I'm doing right now. This is me being totally paranoid. There's a half-eaten apple there. That looks like it was today, because it's not gone yellow enough. I can't get off the mountain. I'm now isolated. I'm now stuck. There's not enough daylight left. I'm gonna go into that mine. I'm gonna set up my tent. I'm gonna take out the Ouija board and we're gonna do this. Isn't that right, guys? I just have to put the finishing touches on the tent. With this little mirror, I'm gonna do the whole say Bloody Mary 3 times into the mirror and see what happens when she comes after you. I'm doing this one away from the tent because I feel like it would be a bad idea to do it in the tent. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Okay, I'll go back to the tent. Hello? Every time I start moving, it sounds like there's someone looking. It sounds like there's someone right behind me. There are so many different noises around the place that everything sounds like it's something else. I thought I heard someone call my name. The more I sit and listen, the more I hear coughing noises and people. I just need to do it. Right, let's do the Ouija board. Is there someone else here other than me? Is someone listening? I'm scaring the crap out of myself. Hello? Thought I heard the sound of someone whistling. Right there, right there. There's something that sounds like children.
Thanks, guys. Here we are at yahoo.com/news. In a story credited to Getty, entitled 5 Terrifying Real-Life Ouija Board Stories. This week sees the release of a chill-inducing horror movie, Ouija, The Origin of Evil, sequel to the spooky movie of 2014. If you've ever played with a Ouija board yourself, you know just how dangerous they can be, as illustrated by these 5 terrifying true-life tales. The tragic case of Carol Sue Elviker. Oklahoma resident Carol Sue Elviker had no criminal record and no history of mental health problems. But one dark night in 2001, she killed her son-in-law, Brian Roach. Elviker claims she had used a Ouija board, which she says sent her a message from the beyond, that her daughter's husband was possessed by an evil spirit and must be eliminated. After the murder, which happened in his sleep, Elviker turned on her own blood. She bundled her own daughter and granddaughter into her car in an attempt to kill them all in a crash. Thankfully, no one died, other than the guy. But Elviker suffered 2 broken ankles, which didn't stop her from stripping naked and running into the woods. She claimed the evil spirit that was in Brian had possessed her instead. She was later ruled to be insane, in what quickly became known as the Oklahoma Ouija board murder. It knows who you are. Gary Gilmore was sentenced to death after he confessed to the murder of 2 men in Utah in 1977. His excuse was more unique than most. He claims his mother, Bessie, made contact one night with a demon by way of the Ouija board, which had cursed his entire family with misfortune. Gary's aunt was seriously paralyzed. Another aunt was killed. Bessie's mother-in-law, Faye, held a seance to get to the bottom of these supernatural shenanigans and wound up half crazy. Bessie claimed that later that same night, she woke up with an otherworldly thing beside her in bed, at which point Faye entered the room and screamed, "It knows who you are." Gary's nightmares started at a young age, and he levels all of his murderous behavior at the family demon. He was executed by firing squad in the same year. Boy, that's swift justice, is it not? Driven to kill father. Toying with Ouija boards is not a modern phenomenon. Invented in 1890, curious players have been attempting to contact the beyond for over a century. In 1933, Dorothea Turley and her 15-year-old daughter Maddie took a board for a spin. A spirit dutifully contacted them and told them via the board to kill Dorothea's husband Ernest. However, it wasn't enough that Ernest had to die. It had to be Mattie that killed her father. Telling her that the board cannot be denied, Dorothea ordered her daughter to shoot her father with a shotgun. He died in hospital from his wounds. Mattie was sent to reform school until she was 18, but there are no records of her after that. I hope she changed her name. That would be the smart thing to do. The Turley case became known as the first ever murder by Ouija board. 1933. DOLL spells doll. All Ouija board stories start with a goof, then quickly become horribly and deadly serious. All of them? On a Reddit thread asking for scary paranormal encounters, user Jake Nichols recounted how he and his cousin and their family were using a Ouija board at home. Before they started, they removed a large, creepy porcelain doll from the same basement and took it to another room, placing it face down. Then the board listed a string of numbers that Jake's cousin recognized as his Social Security number, which no one else at the table knew. The spirit was asked to prove itself. Uh-oh, you're not supposed to do that. And the board spelled out the word doll. Suitably freaked, Jake and his friends rushed next door, only to see the doll standing upright in the middle of the room. Naturally, they burned the board. And hopefully the doll, too. Writes the author. Let's check out some art.
A dangerous and effective tool for communicating with the dead. It goes by names such as spirit board, witch board, talking board, but the most famous name of all of them is Ouija. The concept of the Ouija board can allegedly date back to 1100 AD in China, calling it planchette writing, which got banned during the Qing dynasty. However, Ouija became the most popular method in the late 1800s. Shortly after the Civil War, many families mourned the people they lost. The American Civil War took the lives of around 1.5 million people, a number that would leave many families mourning. These boards later received the name Ouija around 1886. Commercialized around 1890 by Charles Kennard and Elijah Bond. The Ouija patent was bought by the Parker brothers in 1966, who remains its distributor. For years, millions upon millions of boards are sold. One of the most famous Ouija board stories are about a demon known as Zozo. said to be a violent, malevolent spirit causing physical attacks, possessions, and various objects being thrown. There have been stories of people stating the Ouija board predicting the day of their deaths. Many who use this board claim they are not making the planchette move, and their hands are being moved by an invisible entity when using it. Is it a spirit? You think it's all in your head? Or is it something else making the planchette move? See you on the other side.
Here's a story at Reader's Digest, actually rd.com on the internet. And it's written by Taylor Markarian. And it's called 13 Spooky Ouija Board Stories That'll Give You Chills. Then Taylor begins. Any believer in the ghosts and supernatural will tell you their golden rule: don't play with Ouija boards. Opening up a board, they say, is like opening up a portal to the other side. Sure, it could connect you with a deceased grandparent, but more likely than not, it's bound to invite an unwanted spirit into your midst. And once that connection is open, it may be very difficult to close. It may be very difficult to close, no matter how much you'd like that pointer to land on goodbye. That's one theory, anyway. Whichever notion you subscribe to, everyone loves real Ouija board stories. Let's start with Hexed. Justin played with a Ouija board one day with several of his friends. They asked questions, but instead of the planchette moving to certain letters, it began to move in a strange pattern. Quote, "It went to all four corners of the board and made an X," the 32-year-old New Jersey resident told Reader's Digest. Then it just went in circles. The next time he used the board, it was with a different friend at his house. Again, the planchette moved in the same strange pattern. He continues, "I felt like it was some kind of hex." Later that night, when he was asleep, he felt a forceful hand grab his arm and wake him up. Everyone else in the house was sound asleep. Looking for a less freaky foray into the supernatural? Try some witch movies that'll put a spell on you. A ghastly glitch. Abby was in her room one night after playing with the Ouija board earlier that day. As she was getting ready for bed, her computer screen changed from black to blue, and it turned on by itself. She turned the computer off. Again, the computer clicked itself back to life. Anxious, Abby unplugged the computer completely, and then the unpowered computer started back up again. She buried the Ouija board in her backyard that same night. If you don't particularly want a Ouija board story of your own, Halloween party games will get you in the spooky spirit without the actual spirits. Looks like this was a Halloween article. Most people play with a Ouija board in groups, or at least with one other person. But Oceana wanted to try to use it on her own. She put her hands on the pointer and asked questions, but nothing happened. She took her hands off the pointer and was about to put the game away when the planchette began to move on its own. "I'll never try that again," says the 30-year-old from New Jersey. The open circle. When Vince, now 30 years old, was a child, one of his friends goaded him into playing with a Ouija board in his basement. Young Vince did not expect anything out of the ordinary to happen, so he went along. Once they started to play, however, the lights began to flicker. The air around them grew cold, and a spirit began to communicate with them through the board. The spirit spelled out a Russian name, and the spirit claimed he had been murdered. Vince says, "We took a break to make some pizza rolls, but we forgot to close the circle when we were done. If you're new to Ouija board stories, that's a big no-no." After returning to the basement, the energy was much heavier, Vince continues, and books and things were sprawled out on the floor, end quote. And yet the board remained perfectly still in the center of the room, just as they had left it. Vince says, "Upon looking at a mirror that we had nearby, the eye of the Ouija board was moving sporadically in the reflection." It's there somewhere. A haunted housewarming. The first time I used a Ouija board, I was about 6 or 7, and I was with my mother and older sister, who was 15 at the time. Says Paige, now 24. The family had just moved to a new house, much bigger and much older than the one in which they lived previously. That night, Paige, her mother, and her sister were eating pizza on the living room floor. Since they didn't have, Takahama Olsen too says, "Stop kissing the mic." Is that a sound problem for you guys? I thought it was okay on that. Since they didn't have all their furniture set up yet, and they put on a fire to ease the chill of the fall air. After dinner, her sister pushed her mother to let them play with their old Ouija board. Of course, they brought it with them, cross-country. As we were using it, Paige recounts, a box in the living room that had some books in it literally flew across the room. Shortly after that, inexplicably, the fire went out, and their mother was so shaken that she took the girls to their grandmother's house to spend the night. Summer camp scare. Ouija board stories don't necessarily have to involve the professionally packaged toy. As a child, Liam was at summer camp one year, when he and some other boys drew their own Ouija board on a large sheet of paper. He says as soon as we started using it, we heard knocking coming from inside one of the lockers. Yikes! Side note, as any scary movie aficionado knows, never check out those sorts of suspicious noises. Guess there's no ending to that story. Let's check out some art.
That was not a brand deal for Spirit Halloween, but we are going into the store right now to hopefully walk out with a new Ouija board. Keep saying that I'm not gonna mess with the Ouija board, but you know, it's October, it's Halloween season. I wanna get into the spirit a little bit, so we're gonna go in there and we're gonna play this thing in an abandoned, creepy house in the middle of the desert, and wish us luck. This is the last one? This is good, this is good. This is the last one. And I had a lot of friends tell me that they don't think they work, they don't believe it. That's the house right there, dude. This is actually really scary, dude. We're gonna play with it really quick and then get the hell out of here. All right, how's it looking in there? Destroyed. Are there any spirits out there that would like to contact us? Yes or no? Like, I'm not gonna move it. If it wants to move, it'll move.
Are there any spirits here that want to contact us? Yes or no?
Like, I want it to work, but I'm not gonna move it. Like, are you an evil spirit?
What the hell is happening right now? Oh.
Like, it's working, it's just like so slow.
stop, dude. That.
I said, are you an evil spirit? I said, yes. Do you want to spell out your name? No, it doesn't.
Dude, this
How
is.
did-
I'm actually
This
shaking.
is the weirdest
I can
thing. This is
tell
the
out here.
weirdest thing to film, because like, nobody knows. Like, because when I watch these videos before, it's like, okay, like this is gnarly, but like, you know, like you think about it, right? Like, but like, I kid you not, we're just chilling right now.
How did you die?
Dude, whoa.
It's starting to move now, dude. Z.
Just going back to O.
Are you guys shaking or is it just you?
I'm scared as shit. I don't like doing this. Z-O.
Zoo?
Zoo? Did you die at the zoo? Yes. What killed you?
Oh my gosh.
I said, what killed you? Please spell it out. Looking. F?
I'm literally, I can't even breathe right now.
F-A. It's weird, dude. Hey, is your hand cold?
Yes, freezing.
My hand's freezing.
That's why my fingers are like pink.
So, what was it? F-A-M. F-A-M. L.
Family. Fall.
You said F-A. Oh no, was it going to M? It was going to L, not L. M. Are you spelling out fall?
Dude, it's literally, you can see my fingers like hovering over this.
Look at mine. I'm on my fingernails. My hand's shaking. I've known this
Oh.
so long. My hand's freezing, dude. Yes, you fell. Are you a good spirit?
Please no.
You want it to be a bad one?
No, I don't.
Are you an evil spirit?
This is hurting my brain right now.
No.
What are you? What kind of spirit are you?
What the hell?
What kind of spirit are you? 6. 6? What kind of spirit are you? Are you good or bad? Can you please spell it out?
It's literally on.
My hand's freezing, dude.
That's the devil's number.
It's
Guys,
sitting
my-
on 6.
We're in the middle of Arizona right now, and my hand, everything else in my body is perfectly fine. My hand is freezing right now. I just got the tingles. I don't like this. What the is that?
Did you? I heard that.
Yeah, it's like out there.
How old are you?
Dude.
6. Why does it keep going to that?
No matter what we ask with a number, it's 6.
Can you give us a physical sign that you're here right now?
No, dude.
I'm getting tingles. I don't like this.
Okay,
My
end
whole
it
arm
then.
is shaking, dude. I'm not kidding.
Dude, end it.
See, wait for it. See what it says. Holy dude! When I said, can you give me a physical sign? Look, it's moving. I'm not paying attention. When I said, give me a physical sign, I got a jolt down my my right arm and my back, and I got tingles. I have tingles everywhere right now. I'm
My
not playing
hand's
around.
tingling, bro.
Can we leave? That sound.
I've never in my life heard an Ouija board make that sound. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna say goodbye. Goodbye. I'm doing this. Gotta go over goodbye. Oh.
Feel my right. Okay, someone with normal
Touch my
hands.
hand.
Hey,
Touch my
I
hand.
swear to God,
Touch my
Tanner.
hand.
Feel this hand.
Touch my hand. Do you
Jesus.
feel how cold
Oh
that
my
is?
God.
Feel this hand.
Feel this
I
hand.
just felt Tanner's.
Feel this hand.
Feel this hand.
What the hell?
We're getting the heck out of here, guys. Okay, so while we were playing that, I said, can you give me a physical sign? I've done this every time I've played the Ouija board, and one time, like, a street light has gone off, we've gotten tingles, or, like, just, like, really weird stuff has happened, and when I said that, Like, I'm not kidding. I got like a jolt in my back and it like scared me and made me like jump. And then me and Jeremy's hand was like freezing the entire time. Like, they even felt, Jacob and Justin even felt.
I'm tripping.
Like, this hand was freezing and this one was completely fine. I don't know if it was like a demon. I'm assuming it was because it kept going to like the number 6, and then it said it was an evil spirit, and just like a bunch of crazy stuff happened. But man, that was like scary. And I've never played the Ouija board. We just got scared to death playing the Ouija board.
Back to RD.com. Blackout. There are times in all of our lives when we question if something is really a coincidence, or if it is in fact much more meaningful. When Becky used a Ouija board during her first semester in college, she had one of those experiences. She says a few minutes in, we lost power. Some car hit a pole on our street. The timing was strange, she says, to say the least. Deadbeat dad. Owen started playing with Ouija boards when he was a child, and he has continued to experience paranormal phenomena ever since. The 24-year-old Ohio native says, "My grandfather on my father's side died before I was born. He and my dad were estranged, so my dad never spoke of him, nor did he have pictures of him around. One day, Owen began to see and talk to a person he called Michael. Unbeknownst to him, Michael was his grandfather's name. Finally, my parents sat me down," he says, "showed me a picture of a man I'd never seen, and asked me if I knew who it was. I told them it was Michael, and that he was there with us right then." Kind of wish these stories would have an ending. That's Reader's Digest for you. Flamethrower. Be warned, some Ouija board stories can be violent. I challenge you to do that in a paragraph of this size. When Anna was in high school, she had a sleepover with a bunch of her friends. One of them, Brianna, wanted to use the Ouija board to contact her grandfather, who had recently passed away. The friends set up the board, turned off the lights, and lit a candle. They called upon the spirit of the grandfather, but when they did, the candle suddenly threw itself directly at Anna. She felt it was probably not the spirit for which they had called. Blast from the past. Glenn, a 29-year-old from Pennsylvania, says of his experience with the Ouija, "I saw a full-bodied apparition. The apparition he saw was that of a young girl, wearing what looked like a commoner's clothing from an antiquated era. He told the story to his neighbors, who happened to be historians, and they told them that a little girl, just like the one he described, used to live in his house." Quote, "The apparition ended up being a 10-year-old girl named Annalisa, who had died of tuberculosis sometime in the late 1800s. I think there's more to the story from Annalisa, but that's where this story ends. Reader's Digest, people. So digestible. Delayed reaction. One evening when she was in high school, Sherry decided to use the Ouija with her friends. Nothing seemed to happen, so they all just gave up. What they would later discover was that the Ouija board did actually work. The 29-year-old Iowa resident says, "Weird stuff happened in the house ever since that night, and to this day, it hasn't stopped. We've had glasses move right across the table by themselves. I saw a spoon and a cup of coffee, aggressively stir in the cup without anyone being near it. The sound of footsteps leading from upstairs down into the living room entrance has never stopped. Paranormal experts say that these are the classic signs of a haunted house. They must be geniuses. Dorm Hall Morgue. When Tommy was a freshman in college, he and his dorm mates took out a Ouija board and had a threatening encounter with some very dark spirits. The 25-year-old New Yorker says the dorm hall used to be a morgue. It was the perfect setting for a goof with friends, he thought, but they failed to realize just how serious it could get. The planchette began to move on the board, and the spirit or spirits communicated to them that 83 demons would come for them. He says the next thing you knew, the dorm is haunted, and the girls can't sleep because stuff was turning on and off and messing with them, so they had a priest come in to bless the room. Afterward, it was good. He adds, "That's why I don't mess with Ouija boards anymore." Metalcore says, "Behold, the lightning rod of Zeus." When heads roll. Randy learned what a Ouija board was the hard way, when 2 of his family members introduced him to one when they were all children. The 36-year-old Michigan resident says, "My brother and cousin were older than us. This particular time, they had come home with a Ouija board. We agreed to play, and to turn off the lights, and to light a candle." Randy sat down with his favorite doll, Kelly, at his side, nervously waiting in the dark. He says we started playing and asking questions, and before we knew it, the planchette started moving around in a pointed direction. It traveled the board, dragging itself to the letter K. It then made its way to E and L. For a moment it paused, then quickly circled right back around for another L, before finally landing on Y, spelling out the name of his doll. Randy recounts the next thing we knew, there was a loud bang against the radiator, and everybody started screaming. We turned on the lights, and by the radiator was the severed head of my favorite doll. Now that's a little creepy. Let's check out some art.
My name is Hippie Steve. Now, Ouija boards are kind of an odd thing because most people think that Ouija boards are kind of this parlor trick. The Ouija boards used to be sold in children's stores, which is just crazy if you think about it. Hey guys, you want to play Monopoly? You want to play Candyland? Or do you want to play with an Ouija board? Sure, let's talk to the dead. What's the worst that can happen? My story with the Ouija board starts back in the mid-90s. My mom bought an Ouija board. I think she bought it because my great-grandmother at that time just passed away, and I think it was her way of trying to communicate with her. So I remember sitting there with my mom, and we'd be messing around with the Ouija board. She was trying to talk to my great-grandmother. You know, when you're a kid, you want to do what your parents do. So I would go into the closet, dust off the old Ouija board, and just start messing around with it. So I was like 7 or 8 years old at this time, so I'm not trying to summon the devil or anything like that. I'm trying to summon the things that I was learning at school. I actually tried to summon the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. He didn't show up. About 2 months later, I'm in the bathroom. There's a mirror right in front of the sink. So I'm washing my hands, looking down, and as soon as I looked up in the mirror, I saw what looked to be my mom, soaking wet, looking at me in a very sinister fashion, lunging at me. And this was so real that I turned around to defend myself, only to find Nobody was there. That's a lot to process for a kid that young. I'd be sitting there playing some Super Mario by myself, and I would just hear something slightly whisper my name. I'd go, Steven. And I'd look around, nothing. So I keep playing my game and killing the turtles, and then all of a sudden I hear, Steven. I turn around again, nobody. I'd be laying in bed at night, and my bed would start shaking. And luckily, we actually moved out of that apartment, I don't know, a year later. And I didn't think it followed me. So really about 10 years later, I'm at this point about 17, 18 years old. I was just getting together with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And I guess my mom wanted to make a good impression. So she busted out the Ouija board and we were messing around with it. I was messing around with it too. I would start having weird scratches that would randomly pop up on my body. First, it would begin in my shoulders. These scratches would continue on and off for being a teenager, going into my 20s. And I think whatever was inside me, that had been inside me ever since I was a kid, was really wreaking havoc. These scratches that I would experience started becoming more and more aggressive. A lot of people kind of have this misconception of what a demonic possession really is. But if you actually look into supposed accounts of demonic possessions, a lot of times they're not that obvious. It's very subtle. These scratches were becoming extreme. It was like I was being attacked. I would just wake up with big scratches on my arm, on my legs, on my stomach. My legs felt like they were on fire at times. And these were so frequent that I would tell my wife, because I was feeling hotness in my leg, you see right there, in about 1 hour, there's going to be some scratches right there. They're not there at the time, but they will be there. And as sure as clockwork, within an hour, there were scratches on my leg. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And I don't know if you want to call it by the grace of God, I discovered something called the gateway process. And so I would try that. That's really what I felt like got me out of whatever was in me, out of me. You know, I'm not a science guy. I'm not like Bill Nye. But obviously this deals with left brain, right brain hemisphere type deal, synchronization. And it's something that even to this day I still use, that I still have great admiration for. And I'm very lucky I found it.
Here at listverse.com, thanks guys. Here at listverse.com is an article entitled 10 Terrible Crimes Connected to Ouija Boards by Robert Grimmick. And Mr. Grimmick begins. The Ouija board was invented in the 1890s as a parlor game, with no real association to ghosts or spirits. In 1966, the rights to the game were sold to Hasbro, which still owns it. And Ouija boards have been mass-produced ever since. The movement on the board is caused by the ideomotor effect, which happens when someone unconsciously moves the planchette. People still fear the Ouija board, and it has been involved in some incredibly bizarre and violent crimes. Maybe we'll get some more details on the couple of crimes we went over earlier. Number 10, Nancy Bowen and Lila Jimerson. On March 7, 1930, Clotilda Marchand answered the door of her Buffalo, New York home and found an unfamiliar Native American woman on her doorstep. In broken English, the woman accused her of being a witch and then attacked her with a hammer. Finally, she stuffed a chloroform-soaked rag down Clotilda's throat. A short time later, her body was found by her 12-year-old son. Witnesses saw the killer scoping out the house. And Clotilda's husband, the sculptor Henri Marchand, pointed the police toward one of his models, a Seneca woman named Lila Jimerson. She and 66-year-old Nancy Bowen, the actual killer, were arrested on the night of the murder. Soon the complicated murder plot came to light. In the fall of the previous year, Jimerson and Bowen were using a Ouija board in an effort to contact the spirit of Bowen's recently deceased husband, Sassafras Charlie. Through the Ouija, Sassafras Charlie apparently said he was murdered by a woman named Clotilda, and gave her address and her description. After the seance, Bowen began receiving letters from a mysterious Mr. Dooley, explaining that Clotilda was actually a witch, and she had placed a hex on Sassafras Charlie because she was jealous of his healing power. When the hex did not work, Clotilda just killed him. The letter also indicated that Bowen might be Clotilda's next victim. Of course, all this was coming from Jimerson. Henri Marchand claimed that Jimerson was infatuated with him and had plotted to kill his wife out of jealousy. However, Jimerson's lawyers said that she and Henri were actually having an affair, and it was Henri who had orchestrated his wife's death. Jimerson was acquitted of the crime, while Bowen pled guilty and was released on time served. As for Henri, he moved to Albany, New York, and married his murdered wife's 18-year-old niece within the year. The Carroll family. On Christmas Eve 2014, Paul Carroll was using a Ouija board in his home in Consett County, Durham, United Kingdom. According to Carroll, he was trying to contact the dead when an evil spirit entered the family dog, Molly. Carroll, who has learning disabilities, then drowned the dog and dismembered her body. That would be illegal over here. You can get arrested for that. Afterward, he dumped the body in an outside drain, causing it to back up. When workers were brought in to fix the drain, they discovered the body of the dog. Meanwhile, neighbors who had heard the story reported Carroll to the police. He was arrested and charged with causing the dog unnecessary suffering. Evidently also illegal in the UK. Carroll pled guilty and received a suspended sentence. But the story takes an even stranger turn the following year. Just a week after her husband's guilty plea, Carroll's wife Margaret and his stepdaughter Katrina were using the same Ouija board when it apparently told them they were going to die. The next day, the mother and daughter took some prescription drugs and then set their house on fire in an apparent suicide attempt. Both women were hospitalized, but they survived. Luckily, no one else was hurt, even though there was explosive gas canisters in the house. Both Margaret and Katrina were arrested for arson and given 4 years in prison. Hopefully, the family has given up their Ouija board hobby, or at least stopped blaming their crimes on it. Might have been external demons. Here we go, Dorothea and Maddie. We did touch on this before. Let's see if we can find out anything new about this story. On November 8th, 1933, Dorothea Irene Turley was using a Ouija board with her 15-year-old daughter, Maddie Turley, at their home in Prescott, Arizona. Dorothea was using the planchette, which spelled out a message instructing Maddie to kill her father, thereby freeing Dorothea to marry a young cowboy. She also told her daughter that the board could not be denied. So obedient to her mother and the board, Maddie walked up behind her 48-year-old father and shot him twice in the back while he was doing chores on the farm. He died in a hospital. Both Maddie and Dorothea were arrested, and the whole story quickly came out. Mattie admitted her guilt and was sentenced to a forum school until she was 18, so 3 years. Dorothea was convicted of assault with intent to commit murder and given a sentence of 10 to 25. However, the conviction was overturned by the Arizona Supreme Court 3 years later in 1936, resulting in the release of Dorothea from prison after serving 3 years. So they got out about the same time. Crazy. And on what grounds was the conviction overturned? On February 10th, 1993, we're not going to tell you yet. We got to go to the next bit of art. We'll come back to this, though. Anyone know what this is? Or how to use it?
An Ouija board. Place 2 fingers, say hello, don't play alone. It can't be that serious. Hello. Ah! Oh my gosh. Hello. Do you know my future? Alright. So when am I going to die?
Continued the story of Stephen Young. On February 10th, 1993, 35-year-old Stephen Young, an insurance broker, entered the home of 45-year-old car dealer Harry Fuller in Wadhurst, England. Young was swimming in debt, and he knew that Fuller kept large quantities of money in his house. Young shot Fuller once in the back, and then shot his young wife Nicola 4 times, including once in the face. When Nicola called the police, the operator heard noises, but thought it was a young child playing games, so help was not sent. It turns out the noise the operator heard was the dying Nicola Fuller, trying to speak through a severely broken jaw. A short time later, Young was arrested for the crime. He admitted going to the Fuller house on the day of the murder, but insisted that Harry and Nicola were already dead, prompting him to run away in fear. That story failed to convince the jury, and he was convicted and given 2 life sentences. Then in October 1994, the following year, a retrial was ordered, because 4 of the jurors turned out to have sought a bit of outside help in making their decision. They used an upturned wine glass as a planchette on a Ouija board in an attempt to contact the victims and ask them if Young did it. Apparently, the board confirmed that Young was the murderer. The next morning, the foursome told the other 8 jurors about the board's message. Although the jurors insisted they didn't take it seriously or let it affect their decision, Young's appeal for a second trial was granted. The retrial was hard for the family of the victims, who were disappointed by the ruling. Luckily for them, Young was again found guilty at the second trial. Gary Gilmore. Over the course of 2 nights in 1976, the bicentennial year, a career criminal named Gary Gilmore shot 2 men to death in Utah. He got arrested and became famous when he demanded to be executed for his crimes. Gary's younger brother, Michael Gilmore, later wrote the classic book Shot in the Heart about their childhood. In the book, Michael relays a strange story about their mother, Bessie. Didn't we do a Bessie story? According to Michael, Bessie was convinced she had contacted a demon spirit through a Ouija board as a child. Furthermore, she believed that the demon had subsequently attached itself to her family. She became even more convinced when one of her sisters was killed and another one was left paralyzed after an accident. As an adult, Bessie married Frank Gilmore, whose mother, Faye, was a medium. One night, Bessie was told there would be a seance at Faye's home. Remembering her own bad experience with the supernatural, Bessie stayed away, returning to find Faye exhausted and terrified. She managed to get the older woman into bed before heading to sleep herself. A short time later, she was awoken by the feeling that something was touching her face. When she opened her eyes, she saw a terrifying inhuman creature lying in bed beside her. Screaming, she jumped out of bed, only to see Faye walking into the room, shouting, "It knows who you are," and urging Bessie to get out of the house right away. Panicking, she ran to the bedroom in which her children were sleeping. There she saw the creature looking directly into the eyes of her young son, Gary. She managed to grab her kids and flee the house. But afterward, Gary reportedly began to have terrible nightmares. Bessie would see the entity again, standing in her house, just before Gary started to get into trouble. She came to believe that the demon she had summoned as a child through the Ouija board had possessed her son, making him an angry and violent man. In 1977, Gilmore was executed for his crimes by way of firing squad. He is the subject of Norman Mailer's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Executioner's Song, which was also adapted into a TV movie starring Tommy Lee Jones. Did they say what his crimes were, though? Oh yeah, up at the very top. Shot 2 men to death in Utah. So it turned him bad. That's interesting. Okay, let's check out some art.
누구세요? 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 응? 뭐야 이거? 위자보드라고 하면 말이야 촛불이 있어야 되는데 그래서 하나 켰어. 너무 무서워요. 왜 이래? 손이 움직여. 왜 이래? 뭐야? 손이 움직이고 있어. 절대로 제가 움직인 게 아니에요. 당신은 죽었나요? 죽었군요. 대체 누가 보는 거야? 혹시 저하고 연관돼 있는 그러니까 당신은 죽었는데 이걸 보낸 사람이 저하고 연관이 있단 그 얘기죠. 이건 말도 안 되잖아. 말해보세요. 뭔가 중대한 당신은 절 아는 사람인가요? 움직여. 절 만났다고요? 어디서 만났는데요? 동물? 동물? 잘은 모르겠지만 설마 동물원? 당신이라고? 진짜? 말도 안 돼. 야, 아닐 거야. 그럴 리가 없잖아. 당신은 죽었어. 이게 몇 년 된 사건인데 당신이 지금 꺼져. 꺼지라고! 당신이면 아니야. 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 진짜 미안해. 당신이면은 진짜 미안해 됐어. 그건 내가 한 짓이 아니야. 그건 알아줬으면 좋겠어. 나도 피해자야. 나 돈 필요했어. 그래 맞아. 나 돈 필요했고 그래서 들어갔었어 그 사이트에. 그래서 만난 사람이라고. 내가 죽인 게 아니라고.